So I'm here today with my dear friend Kimberly Behling from UPstageLA. And out of hundreds of homes that I've sold around Los Angeles, Kimberly is my secret weapon to getting the job done. Thank you for being with me today, Kimberly.
Of course, anything for you.
So we've been working together over 15 years.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, and you have absolutely sold every single house that you have staged for me.
I've just been your assistant.
Well,
You're the man. You're truly the man.
well, thank you very much. You're too kind. Couldn't have done it without you.
Well, we make a good team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have some questions for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about your business. When did you start, and what was the impetus for you to start the staging business?
Well, I was in interior design school and I was working at a furniture store, and it's kind of a long story, but I ended up selling a bunch of furniture to a big realtor at the time who told me he was just looking that day. And he started getting I gave him and his wife a tour of the furniture store that I was working in because we had imports, we made custom stuff. And so I was more informational. I gave them a tour around, and he jumped in and said, "Oh, Maria, we have to have this for our house." And I said, sir, you are just looking.
Right.
Carry on. And I was just joking around with him. And I sold him a bunch of furniture that day, and he started kind of hounding me to come and be a salesperson on his real estate team because he said, having a good eye for furniture and interior design is key in real estate.
Right.
And I turned him down many, many times. And then he had me come over to look at a house that was brand new construction on the market, and they ran out of money, so they didn't have all the jewelry that I call it, all the finishes and fixtures. So you couldn't really tell where which one was the dining room because it was kind of a circular type of layout in the house. It had the kitchen, and then it had a room, and then it had a room, and then it had and nobody could. Even though the market was hot, nobody was buying it because it was confusing and it was not finished.
Yeah.
So this is before staging was even happening. They were doing it in tract home developments where I was raised in Porter Ranch, and they were building tract home developments while I was growing up. So I was always really excited to go see the model homes because if they had 7 different floor plans in a tract home of 49 homes, they would do the 7 models, and then you would pick your favorite floor plan, and then they would show you which lots that they were on, but you always went through the model homes, and that's where the staging thing kind of started, but people didn't really understand that. So when I started the staging company, I was explaining what staging was 23 years ago.
That was ahead of the time. So 23 years ago, so you started at a furniture store, and then you did you work on his team? You became a realtor?
So that house, it was just so basic what I brought over. I brought over a dining set with a rug. I brought a living room setup, and I brought a family room setup, and I brought a master bedroom setup. We were there all day on a Saturday still. It takes time to set things up, but the neighbors came over, and they thought the layout was different, and then they got it, and as I was trying to wrap it up, they brought their friends over who had already seen the house. They wanted their friends to live on the same street, but their friends didn't get it either. And all of a sudden, they got it. The staging, the layout of it, and how it was created. It clicked with them. So they bought the house and the furniture. It was a total fluke, and so he thought I was even a bigger deal, and it was just really a fluke because that doesn't always happen, but it did plant the seed of how you can live in it, how you can sit down, and how you are supposed to lay out your furniture and which room is supposed to be which room. And it does create that emotional response and that coziness that you need to be able to sell a residential home. That's where you come home every single day to.
True.
And if it's an empty box, you can't really visualize yourself coming home to an empty box. It just doesn't really translate in your head.
You're exactly right.
It's an emotional thing.
You're exactly right. So you are a huge deal, and I'm one of the tens or hundreds of realtors that you work with around Los Angeles, and consider myself very lucky that we've had such a successful track record. And did you start even younger through design school? I mean, as a young girl, did you grow up playing with doll houses and designing furniture around your home. And where did you come up with this flair and this knack for the ability to be so creative?
Well, I mean, my mom is really good at interior design, and she was always designing custom things with a carpenter. She did a lot of, back in the 80s, she was doing all these oak built-ins and, you know, remodeling our kitchen and doing all these things. And I was very interested in what she was doing, and I liked to draw out furniture pieces and give her my ideas too. But it was kind of piggyback on what she was already doing.
So I've seen you in the beginning stages of a transaction where I'm actually trying to get the listing. And in order to get the listing, sometimes the sellers don't understand staging. And it sounds like you've actually created or helped to create the need or desirability and understanding of staging, because even 10 or 12 years ago, staging wasn't the norm.
Right.
Some people would stage and it would look extra special, but
Right.
but so many sellers would try to avoid the costs, not understanding that it's actually quite affordable and that you get so much more for your money as a seller when you stage.
Right.
And in fact, I have a quote from the National Association of Realtors that took a survey. Nearly 500,000 realtors around the country were surveyed, and 81% of them tell us that staging reduces the amount of time on market and increases the sale process and the bottom line for the seller.
If you think about the sale price of the home compared to the price of staging, it's literally chump change.
Right.
Because you're leaving so much money on the table. I know it's like a lot, it's a big bite to chew off for a lot of people, especially when you've maybe let your home go for a little while and your realtor gives you a whole task list of things. You have to get this painted, you have to, you know, do fresh paint, you have to repair all of these items, and it becomes really expensive. And then of course I'm always the last person because staging goes right before the photo shoot. So people, they're really tightening up their purses at that point, and then it sounds like such a big chunk of change, but it's really one of the most important things, because that is it's the final emotion that you're putting into the house to make people want to the pictures are what make people come to the house in the first place.
Absolutely.
If you don't have good photos, I mean, some people are more numbers people, but if you're living somewhere and you go through the photos online first, and then you decide which ones you want to see, and then you go see those ones. So if the photos are good, the photos are everything. Because that's what gets them to the property, and then the realtor can help them fall in love with the property. They can see it and sit on the furniture and visualize themselves actually living there.
Besides the price of the home and the location that people are looking at, the very first thing that everyone does, including myself, is look at the photographs. Even before reading the text and all the sub-details that are so important about buying a home, one of the largest investments of our life, the photos are what draw us in. And I always tell the sellers, we don't get a second chance at a first impression.
Exactly.
You get one chance. And if everything isn't dialed in perfectly, then you're leaving money on the table or losing that buyer.
Absolutely. I think staging pays for itself tenfold at the end of the day.
And sometimes people don't have the luxury of moving out of their home. They actually are living in their home. So you offer what we call a light staging, that you'll come in and you'll help that seller get organized and declutter and accessorize with their furnishings, maybe change out some art. Possibly we can brighten up some walls if they're into doing a light paint job or touch-ups and stuff like that. And so that's
every project is different, isn't it? Every single project is a different process of what we're doing, depending on if they live there, if they don't live there, what they already have. It's sometimes the jobs where people live there are the hardest ones, I think.
So for me, I always rely on you for more than staging, and you're so generous to offer it. But a lot of these clients that we work for have the ability to move out of their home. So we end up doing a refresh or a light remodel, and sometimes
a revamp. A revamp, yeah.
And so you're also really good with color. And you have helped multitudes of my clients pick the color for the inside and the outside of the home. And it just draws people in, and it just makes it pop. And these houses that you touch with your magic end up selling for way more money. We've set records in almost every neighborhood that we've sold in. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So let me ask you this. What what is your secret sauce? What is the magic that you have where a home speaks to you in regards to the difference of architectural design and how you can pull from your warehouses that you can choose the type of furnishings that match so well with this home? How does a home speak to you? Is it a feeling you get?
Well, I mean, you have to appreciate the home for what it is first. And then you really want to start with what style was this home meant to be, and then take it to the most contemporary version. But even if it's dated, you got to bring it to the most contemporary version to be sellable for right now, to make people see it as brand new, even if it's used. You just got to get it back to its, a new feeling, something that's fresh and that is all yours, and you don't get the heebie-jeebies about somebody else living there before, that it was pre-owned or something like that. It's basically like a new car versus a used car. I mean, all of us would rather have a new car, right?
Pretty much
And
of
if
the
we
time.
can present the house as new as possible, as fresh as possible, as opposed to handing them over to a house that people have just moved out of and they still have lingering things and it's messy and dirty. It's such a different feeling.
And in staging, you're designing a showcase for the property. You're in some ways less is more, and from a psychological and subconscious perspective, when we see a bookshelf and there's stacked with books and no room for any other books, in some ways it's off-putting because
feels crowded.
the buyer doesn't have a place to put their own books.
Right.
Or if there's a hallway with a whole bunch of personal artifacts, it feels overwhelming and intrusive for the buyer to walk through that hallway or be in that home, like they're intruding on someone else's space. But as a stager, you minimize. So you might have 10 books in a 50-shelf bookshelf, and you might wrap them, and you also, in a lot of ways, it's non-denominational and non-religious, but at the same time, sophisticated and enthusiastic and classy, and you put different types of books depending on the type of home.
Right.
And the artwork that you install is just always so on point, and it's so warm and inviting and positive, and also, a question that I have for you is, how do you choose from your warehouses when you have 20, 30, 40 homes that are moving? How do you choose which furniture to bring for a specific home? Because sometimes I know you have these warehouse sales and you sell your furniture every couple years and you buy new so that you're totally current.
Yes.
And then sometimes you have to go and buy new furniture for a home. And
I'm constantly buying new furniture. I think that I try to go to the Las Vegas Furniture Show every year, at least once. They do 2 seasons, but I like to go at least once every year and update. I have a lot of really great vendors that I use, but there's always new furniture lines that come out, and my continuous vendors, their new furniture lines that come out. And honestly, when furniture, first of all, I have 23 years, in business now, so I have a whole lot of furniture, and on average, we have between 40 and 50 homes done at a time. So first, it's what's available. I'll tag and set aside what's available for if I know a home's coming up, and then I'll assess what I might need, and then if I need something, I'm definitely going to order it or buy it or have it made, or whatever I need to finish that job.
so you have furniture made too. Sometimes I have a couple other questions. Okay, so you started in a furniture store.
Yes.
You got hired on a real estate team. You sold the houses.
I was their buyer's agent. So I would help with the visual and find that right home and then hand them over to.
And that was 23 years ago. And in all of this time, you have now amassed over 3 warehouses, multiple moving trucks, giant crews of movers and stagers, assistants and office staff. And I've seen you every single time we've worked together. You roll up your sleeves and do the heavy lifting to the minor details of the final touches of accessorizing.
Right.
And how do you manage all the creativity and the business all at once?
It's time consuming for sure. It is my life. I mean, staging is not an easy business to have. There's so much overhead. There's so many different things that you need. The labor crew is difficult to, maintain and keep for a long time period, because labor crews always, come and go. It's not an aspiration to be a furniture mover or a labor guy necessarily.
But they get to learn from you.
But they get to learn, and they get to grow, and they get to have a job out of college while they're in college, growing their knowledge on what they really want to do. Or I've had a lot of really great guys over the years,
And
I
girls.
still have and girls, and I have some really great ones right now that are just so dedicated and so strong.
They're super strong.
Yeah, they're super strong.
Okay, so let's talk about objections. So a seller will move out of the house, and they will hire your company to come in, and you will install furnishings into a home. And even though the seller's not living in the house anymore, all of a sudden they'll come and see a finished product, and they will have objections to how they feel about it, because it's different than what they lived with for 5, 10, or 20 years.
Right.
And I immediately speak to them and say, well, you have to understand, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that we're staging for an event. We're not staging for somebody to dislike or absolutely love the furnishings. We're staging to, in some ways, you have to be middle of the road, a little bit neutral, but at the same time, we have to be effective for the purpose of selling a home. So we have to touch the masses with some sort of excitement. How do you find your way through creating the furniture and design in a home that is neutral yet current and yet totally applicable to that particular style of home?
Well, I mean, I do have to stay current with, what is selling, and I can personally see what sells and what doesn't. It's easy for me to kind of see what designs people have loved or what furniture they love. I sell a lot of furniture with the houses that I stage, so I can see what pieces people like, and so I many times have repeats of those, specific staple pieces, I call them. Of course, we use a lot of white in California because everybody wants, staging is different than interior design, because staging is more to appeal to the masses, what everybody's going to feel comfortable with. A lot of people are afraid of color. A lot of people are afraid of different patterns and stuff. So we do have to, like you said, keep it more a neutral palette. But it is really good to have color pops, and because you need that fire, you need that,
Right.
that it needs to create that emotional spark too. I usually try to pull that in through the art, and then accent pillows that, pull those colors out of the art.
I always say to a seller that unconsciously buyers are looking for objections, because typically we've evolved to look at things in buckets of safety or danger. And so from a buyer's perspective, when they see a chip on the wall or a small repair that needs to be done, or things are out of alignment or unstaged or challenging visually, visual chaos I call it, that buyers immediately feel, oh, this is overwhelming. They'll give them reason to pause, maybe not write an offer. They could lose out on an opportunity.
Yeah.
When staging just clears the way, there's obviously you work with some feng shui ideas in your world, and you also work with color and design. And one of the things that you told me right after COVID is everybody loved white because it was sanitary and clean.
Yes.
So
that's another reason that everybody loves white. Yeah.
even still.
Yes, it's not as easy. People would love to be able to live on white. It's not very realistic to live on white. I mean, I have 2 large dogs. I would love to I do have a white living room sofa actually, but if the dogs go in there, it's covered in fur blankets when they're in there, so that I can throw those in the wash when the dogs aren't on the sofa anymore. But you can't necessarily live on all white. It's not very realistic.
So if you had all white furniture, would you say that one of your mottos might be early to bed, early to rise, accessorize, accessorize, accessorize?
Oh, well, accessorizing is actually a little more minimal these days.
Okay.
Everybody used to be all about the tchotchkes and all the, more and more items. But I think that what's really in right now is minimalism. And I think it's so nice because we are selling space ultimately in real estate. We're selling square footage, right? So we can't crowd it up too much with furniture or accessories. Like you said, if the bookshelves are too full, there's no room for their stuff, even though the furniture is most likely going to be gone before they move in. It's just planting a seed, and it's how people react, and they are looking for objections because they're also looking for reasons that they can write a lower offer. And we as realtor and stager have to find all those things so that there are no objections come time for the showing.
Boom.
Right?
Exactly right. Okay,
They just have to love it.
So in terms of emotional response, one of the things that I've noticed on this recent house that you've just staged for us here in Malibu is that you brought in yellow. And yellow was never a color at this house at all.
Yeah.
And it really made the photography sing.
Yeah.
I mean, it just was so gorgeous the way you brought in a yellow umbrella tied with the entry courtyard with yellow pillows and yellow flowers. And you accented this yellow theme throughout various places in the room. And something happens where we feel relaxed when there's consistency.
Yeah.
And so you brought in this color, and then you kept the theme throughout the house.
Yes.
And it's also springtime, which is so great.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for doing such a great job on that.
You're welcome.
In addition to the white furniture, and you also brought in the brown wood along with the white furniture, which is different. Right. So it's sort of like a contemporary Mediterranean, and you turned this classic Mediterranean home into something a bit more modern, but totally still functional and authentic to the architecture.
Right. I do love to keep the house in its original character, and give it that, keep it in that vibe that it originally created. But like I said, it's really good to contemporize it as much as possible to what people want now, even if it's not necessarily the most popular style that is in right now. This whole contemporary farmhouse has been in for ages, and I'm personally so sick of it that this is such a refreshing, special house, because you don't see this type of architecture very often. You don't see this piece of land very often. These views are incredible. All of the amenities that this house has are so special, and the history behind this house is incredible. So I just really wanted to, show it off in its absolute best light because it deserves it.
Let's talk about objections. When you're dealing with a seller and they may not be as educated on the new way of selling a home, opening it up through staging, understanding that we get a first impression only once, and that photography is so important in order to capture the best photography. What's the objection between real staging and virtual staging?
Well, virtual staging, I feel, I've seen a lot of virtual staging, and I think the scale is always off. Just the way that they lay things out is not really realistic to the actual room. And when you finally get the people to the house, it's going to be empty. And
then what?
And then you might lose them because they can't even sit down in that house that they just saw online, and then they're going to realize that the furniture layout, how they saw it in the virtual staging, doesn't really work.
Does it feel like a criminal was there and they stole the furniture, and
possibly
maybe they don't feel safe anymore?
Possibly. I mean, I do understand why some people do it, but
money.
I think that to save money, but ultimately I do feel like they could be leaving quite a bit of money on the table.
Yes.
I think it's just, I didn't even fully believe it myself when I started the staging company. I did think it was extra. But over the years, I have seen where I give people a bid and they don't want to spend the money, and they'll put the house on the market vacant, and it'll sit there and it'll sit there and it'll sit there. And then they get desperate and they call me and ask me, okay, can you please stage it? When is the soonest you can get us in? We have to get this sold.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times we stage it, and then the next weekend it goes in multiple offers.
Of course.
Because it really does create an emotional response.
Yes.
You have to, I think statistically, like 87% of people, and don't quote me on that, I have to look it up again, but cannot visualize how to lay out furniture.
13% can.
There we go.
According to the National Association of Realtors.
Okay, so I wasn't too far off.
Yeah,
then.
87% of
yeah.
people are telling us that, based on the survey, that you get more money for the sale of your house and it sells sooner, less time on market.
Yeah, and that's just, you know, if you have a mortgage, those 3 months are probably what you'd be paying for staging. So it's just
Good point. And what about missed opportunities? What about the time on market? And eventually, what do all buyers ask? The same questions. When was the house built? How many square feet? Why are they selling? How much did they buy it for? And who did the staging?
right.
And how can I buy the staging? So sometimes you can sell this. I try to sell your staging, or at
Yeah.
least tell them to talk
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, I like to sell the furniture with the house because I do like to keep all my furnishings fresh, and I don't like to keep photographing the same furniture over and over again. And when you do, you know, use it and then, you know, move it back and forth from the warehouse and it gets restocked at the warehouse, little dings happen. And over time, if you're using it a lot, then, you know, furniture gets more dings, and I'd love to sell it before that all happens. You know, it's just so nice if we can set the house up just so sweetly for, you know, and people could just bring their toothbrush and move in.
Exactly.
It's happened many times, but it's usually with people who are moving from out of state or out of the country that don't have anything and they just want to buy everything. But I mean, we do a lot of furniture sales.
It's really nice. And you do also a lot of interior design, you were telling me.
Yeah.
That's another side business of yours where, didn't you recently tell me about a client that you staged a home they were selling, and then they walked into the home, they've moved out, they weren't living there, so it was a vacant home for sale, you staged it, they walked in and they were initially objective to it. They said, I don't like it, I feel strange, what did you do? And then about 3 hours later they called you back and said, I can't believe I even said that. This is better than I ever intended this house to look. I've never seen it look so good. Thank you so much for doing such a great job. And can I hire you to help them furnish their new home?
Right. Well, when you live in a home for so long and then you hire a stager to come do it, it almost, I mean, it would really bother me, to be honest. I totally get it. It's so intrusive feeling. Like, you're going to come into my house and you're going to redo all my stuff, and then I'm supposed to, whether they live there or they're staying there or they've moved out, it doesn't feel like theirs anymore, and they feel a little offended at first. But then when when the realtors tell them the reactions of people, or they sit and resonate with it for a while, they do have a change of heart.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
and I get a lot of interior design work that way. And we also work with a lot of builders and developers, and we do all of the boards for them. I pick all the finishes, fixtures, lighting, everything for them.
It's amazing. And I'm so lucky because when you walk into some of the houses that I'm selling, you will look in a kitchen and say, oh, let's replace that center island, or let's replace the backsplash and the countertops. And within 5 days, you have the granite or marble cut and installed. And I'm absolutely blown away. All of a sudden, the kitchen looks new. You hire the painting company or refer the painting company. You can get electricians to install new chandeliers. Next thing you know, the house is painted. It has new lighting, new countertops, backsplashes, and brand new furniture.
Well, it's all a necessity for real estate. So we do have a huge list of sources that we can provide for the realtor and their clients, and to help everything get done as quick as possible for the least amount of money, to put the house on the market fresh, just like it needs to be, as updated as we can get it. But these things happen fast, and we got to work fast. Sometimes, you know, we're in a sweet spot of the real estate market, and we need to get this house on the market, and things have to happen at a certain pace to make that happen. If it lingers on, the seller is just covering their overhead month to month for no reason, and you know, we could be missing a really great opportunity at that time in real estate. So we need to be able to knock it out quickly. We need to have all these resources, and I like to be a source of all that stuff for the realtors that refer me jobs because I want to help them get through things as quickly and easily as possible. And I have so many great resources over the years that I'm happy to share.
Well, Kimberly, I have to say, with you on board and with me on board, it's like pulling the milk truck next to the cereal truck. Absolutely get that house sold. So thank you for your magic. Thank you for your success.
Thank
and
you for bringing me out to Malibu all the time.
You're
I'm out
welcome.
here so often that, I keep thinking about moving out here because
Okay.
it's such a beautiful city. And even though staging and design can be really chaotic, as soon as I come over that hill, it's just such a different, tranquil vibe. Even though there's so much work to be done, it's such a beautiful environment to be working.
Well, I welcome you here, and I'll help you find your house, and then you can stage
Thank you.
it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Sean.